Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today joining me on the Axon Bulletin is young Declan McConville. Welcome back, Dec. Always a pleasure to see you, mate. Looks like you're already getting into the spirit for tonight's game. What's that you're sporting? Talk us through the ensemble.
Yeah, it's one of the new training tops for this season. Quite a kind of take in Love Street 86, I think, with the club. Material's a bit better than the away top last year. It was a bit of a letdown that, but yeah, the mint green stuff this year is quite nice. I used my voucher to get this, so quite nice. Get me in the mood for tonight, which I'm really looking forward to. So hopes are back in action.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it does. I do like that shade of green. JP Mason, our regular Thursday contributor, will be with us in about 5 minutes. But in the meantime, there is always plenty to discuss. Declan, you've not been on the show since last week, and loads has happened since then. But yesterday I was looking back to, and it's hard to do that, especially now that we're in a good place, we're positive, we're looking ahead to tonight. But I was also looking back to where we were last season, going into the first Rangers game. And I think sometimes it's good to reflect on where we actually were this time last year going into the Rangers game at the weekend. So we'll be doing that today. We'll also be talking about tonight's match. Ange has come out quite bullishly said, basically we're going to be playing our game. We're going to go out there to build on the lead. We're not going to try and protect that lead. Now that's fair and well because, on the one hand, you love that cavalier approach, Declan, especially from, the Celtic perspective. But on the other hand, you think, well, a wee bit of caution in games like this. We've been naive in the past in European football, haven't we? We were naive under Rodgers, and I'm not saying we're up against the same level of opposition tonight that we were when Rodgers' teams took a pasting against the likes of PSG, etc. But, I mean, what do you take of those comments from Ange Postecoglou?
I think his philosophy's obviously shown through so far, in the past few games. How many goals they've scored, 6 against Dundee, 6 against St Mirren. So he likes to play attacking football, likes to go forward. People say that attack at times can be the best form of defence. Celtic defence at this point in time is not by any means a finished article. Obviously, Juranovic has just came in, but probably Tony Ralston won't be dropped unless he has an absolute catastrophic stinker 1 week. But we still got, if you look at the defence, a young boy in Stephen Welsh who hasn't had a great amount of experience yet, but he's still doing a job, and many people are still out in Greg Taylor. So Celtic defence at this point in time, Paul, it's kept clean sheets the past few games. It's got a lot better goalkeeper between the sticks now and Joe Hart, but I think we'd all worry that if we did sit back and just soak up the pressure, there would be gaps. There was gaps last week, and we probably get that wee bit of luck that at times I think you need in European football. But it's probably a positive that Ange is saying that, because I would rather that we go forward, because we can certainly score goals. I've got every faith in Abada and Kyogo, and if Edward comes in or Forrest tonight, that they'll score goals. So again, goals are coming from midfield. So yeah, I would rather we go forward tonight than when we sit back and soak up the pressure, because at times that's what we've done under Rodgers. We were obviously playing teams like Bayern Munich and trying to play our game and going forward. You can't do that. You need to have that, kind of mix between attack and the counter, but sitting back and soaking up a bit of pressure and retaining the ball. But against a side like Alkmaar, they've certainly got a mistake in them, I would say, like ourselves. So I would certainly be quite happy just for Ange ball to proceed tonight.
I think you're right. I mean, 90 minutes of that defence being under the cosh would be a tough 90 minutes to watch, Declan. Talk me through your match day, by the way, because I remember, moving into this pandemic, Colin Watt gave us an insight into how he believed watching football would look. He wasn't a million miles off. As you say, we're back in the stadium, but we're not at the game tonight, obviously. How will you be watching tonight as a fan?
I'll be in a Southside boozer with a couple of my pals, and a few Guinness will probably be had. But yeah, it's one of the things I really miss is getting away on a European trip. So last one was just before the lockdown in Copenhagen. It was a good trip as well. Really nice city and stuff, and decent enough result over there. And we thought we would take them back at Celtic Park, but not to be in usual Celtic fashion. But yeah, I'll be watching it on the TV tonight, and again, it's going to be a bit rubbish not being able to go to Ibrox on Sunday, a game I always look forward to in the corner. That the last time I was at, we won 2-0 also in that game. So that'll be a disappointment, but I'll certainly be rolling on the hoops from the pub and at home on Sunday.
Yes, we'll talk all about the game on Sunday. Obviously, we'll focus on tonight's game first and foremost, Declan, and when JP comes in, he can give us his take on it as well. But let's look back for the moment. Actually, when I was looking at the run of fixtures leading up to the first Rangers game last season, as we went into that game, it was obviously a wee bit later on in the season. It was the 17th of October, and we had played 9 league games at that stage. We'd won 8. Obviously, there was that draw against Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. Scored 25 for the loss of 5. So people might be looking at that and going, what were you getting your knickers in a twist about? Well, that only tells half the story, really, doesn't it? I mean, we weren't playing the kind of free-flowing football that were being served up at this moment in time, Declan. We'd had the ball and goalie incident. We'd had the fact that Lee Griffiths had been left at home when we went to France pre-season, so we knew that was another issue. But also, we'd been knocked out of the Champions League against Ferencváros at home in a one-off game. And after that game, I think there were huge concerns around this new £5 million goalkeeper we'd brought in Barkas. Now, we went into the game against Rangers at home, and we failed to have a shot on target. It seems unthinkable now, doesn't it? We lost the game 2-0. And, you know, the following game, I remember the 2-0 game because afterwards was the first time Russell Boyce came into the State of Mind studio to be on the Axon Bulletin. And he joined myself and Tony from Four Tims in a Pod. And I remember after that Rangers game speaking to Tony, and Tony was basically of the view, Neil Lennon has to go right now. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that's a wee bit premature. But I know a lot of people shared his view at that point. It took me until the following game against Aberdeen at Pittodrie at half-time to come to the realisation there was something wrong at Celtic. And he did have to go, and we did have to make that change. And it was at half-time that I said that. Now, afterwards, after that, we know the season that ensued. But when we go back to that, you know, that lead up to the game against Rangers last season, and you compare it to where we are now, Declan, and all the feel-good factor and the positivity that's been instilled in us has happened in such a short space of time under Ange Postecoglou. I mean, how astonishing is that turnaround? Yeah,
I think if you look at the end of season 19-20 in March, and then the relentlessness in that Celtic team just seemed to just slowly pass away week after week. And yeah, we were getting 3 points, but I don't think a lot of people were happy with the standard of football. And if you look at the Ferencváros game in isolation, not playing a striker up front, the post-match comments from Neil Lennon after the match raised a lot of eyebrows for Celtic fans and a lot of concerns about what was actually happening within the building. Obviously, that Rangers game, we missed players out due to COVID. Hopefully, going into this game, we won't have that issue. But the turnaround from, you know, 2-12, two wins in 12 last season, the way the season spiralled out, that 4-1 gubbing in the Scottish Cup, the league. Was that the Scottish Cup or the league?
That was in the Cup. Aye.
That was in the Cup.
They beat us 2-0 in the Cup and 4-1 in the last league game. Yeah,
4-1 in the last league game. And it just you weren't looking forward to watching Celtic at all last season. I think the day that the How news broke, everybody again get their knickers in a twist and thought, here we go again. And even the early signs of, you know, you could see what Andrew's trying to do, but we just kind of thought, have we got the personnel to do this? I was at the game against West Ham, and we get absolutely destroyed. Yeah, it's a good standard opposition, but we get torn apart. But it just seems to have clicked, and it's clicked when we didn't think that it would click, because a lot of journalists ones that we've even had in the show have said to Ange, it takes time for his teams to work.
Yeah.
But, and the breath of fresh air of Kyogo and other players coming in at the side. Obviously, we've got James McCarthy, who's hardly featured for us, still to come into the team. We've got Juranovic still to come into the team. We've got Julien still to return from injury. Things just look so much better, and the turnaround has been incredible. And it's complete testament to Ange Postecoglou, because I just don't think we would have been in this place had he probably not come in the door, and we would have a situation where we're likely saying, "Oh, give Eddie Howe time," because I just don't think Paul, he would have been able. I don't think his recruitment would have been as good as Ange Postecoglou. The calibre of player he would have signed would have been very, very different. And I just think that Ange seems to get Celtic, and everybody has bought into it. And I don't know if Howe would have brought a feel-good factor back just by the name, but had the results not went in his favour. Because if you look at, Midtjylland, everybody would say, BBC journalists were calling it a catastrophe and whatnot, but Celtic fans seem to have just been able to quickly move on for it because they've seen the bigger picture here, that that squad that he had was bare bones, he couldn't implement. And what I said after that game was, if we played Midtjylland, we'd probably beat them. And a few weeks down the line, at this point in time, I would say we could probably beat Midtjylland now. So the difference from even then till now is incredible. And that is complete testament to the manager.
Absolutely. And there is a chance, of course, if we do go through and progress this evening, Declan, that we may face Midtjylland. That is a possibility. And we've seen that in the past. I think Cluj was a good example where once the team had found its flow and its rhythm a wee bit, you realise we are better than the opposition. That is a frustration, and I don't want to bring the good feeling, the positivity down. It's a frustration with Celtic, from the very, very top, that we do go into these qualifiers unprepared. But as you say, I think Celtic fans this season were very good at moving on from that. And because of the way the fixtures work, and you're right into the Europa League qualifiers, you've got no other option than to get over it fairly quickly. The fact we were getting back into grounds, I think, probably helped that a wee bit. But it's interesting that you mentioned the West Ham game, because I remember, obviously, we cover every game on here, and we'll be covering the game this evening, half an hour before kick-off, half-time, half an hour after the game. I still don't know, Declan, how we're going to be covering these games, because there's absolutely no way I'm going to be in the studio for every single game and actually go to the games myself. I can't give up every single game. But we will find a way. We're hopefully going to have something in place where we can maybe do it elsewhere, or we can get some person in the studio and a few of us at the park. We don't know yet, but we'll cover every game. And I remember covering that West Ham game, and I was extremely concerned after that because we had no choice really than to buy into Ange Postecoglou. We had no choice. We knew the situation was such that we'd gone so far down the line with Eddie Howe that this was what we had to deal with, and it was Ange Postecoglou, and we were frantically trying to find out as much as we possibly could about the individual. That wasn't a lack of respect. It's just that, I don't think, up until this season, most of us were keeping an eye on the J-League or the A-League, Declan, and that's just the way it is, because you're so focused on Scottish football. You might be interested in some of the European leagues. You keep an eye on the teams that you might be facing in Europe, etc. But you're focused on the game in hand. So we didn't know a great deal about him. But one thing I would say, Declan, and this again is one of the reasons I'm going back to last season. People might be thinking, why are you digging that up again? I remember the conversations were going along the lines of, well, Neil Lennon's just one man. How much can he do to turn this situation around? And I'm going to bring JP into this conversation in just a second, because I think it's astonishing how much of a change, not just with the playing staff, but how much of a change in terms of the mood of the support. And it seems as though all the way through the club. And a massive part of that, and I know we've got obviously a new CEO in Dominic Mackay, and he'll be working behind the scenes to change the culture. But the huge cultural change that seems to have developed since Ange Postecoglou's come in has been astonishing. I'm going to bring JP in as well, because he is joining us in his usual position in front of that famous bookcase. I would like to have a rifle through some of the CDs, mate. And, we were just talking actually there, JP, about last season. We weren't labouring the fact as such, but as soon as I see that jersey, that reminds me of one fixture and of one man in particular, and that's Olivier Ncham, now departed. But we were just talking, JP, about that. We had so many discussions last season, and people were still standing up for Neil Lennon and saying, his hands are tied. He can't take all the responsibility. The backroom team need to take some of that responsibility. The players have to. The board has to. One man comes in, Ange Postecoglou, and, there seems to have been a wave of positivity, optimism, and a cultural change within the whole club. And that's spread into the fan base as well, JP. Do you think it's fair to say that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I said a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about this on the way down in the train. I've just come back from Tyree. What a place.
Is this you just coming back? Straight into the Bulletin?
Just come in the door, aye.
Brilliant. Mate, you could have done it. You could have done it from that beach.
Well, I mean, I could have. I don't think the signal would have been that good, though. But yeah, no, I was just thinking about this on the way down the train. You know, Lennon said that there needed to be a culture change at the club, and you know, it's probably bigger than him, and it has happened, and it has spread throughout the fan base. And I think I said yesterday, I listened to Ange Postecoglou's interview about a number of things in the last few days, and just to hear the way that he speaks, I mean, it's so refreshing to have somebody that just genuinely speaks sense and, you know, isn't coming out with grandiose statements. I listened to the BBC Sports Sound thing where they were talking about the Furuhashi racism, and they said that they'd asked Ange Postecoglou to come on for an interview on the show, and it had been told he was unavailable. I'm sure he was probably asked to go on that, and he just went, "Nah, look, I've said what I'm going to say. I've condemned it. We're not going to drag this out and labour it." And it's exactly what he said in the interview the other day. He just said, "Look, everyone, any decent human being knows this is wrong. Mm-hmm. We call it out for it being wrong, and we move on. We don't, squeeze it dry or anything like that. It's not about that. It's just about looking after the individual, which he's doing, which the club are doing, and the supporters are going to do as well, and not sort of stretching this out." And yeah, I think even just on that one note alone, he's struck a chord. Certainly with me, and I'm sure with thousands of other people as well. I can see that just in the microcosm of the sort of Twitter sphere that I swim in, so to speak.
Swim is the word, because there's a lot of sharks in that Twitter sphere. Yeah, I'll tell you, JP, over the last few days and beyond. But Declan, I am astonished with the impact he's made, and not just on the park. I mean, with regards to that, we were told by Dan Orowitz from the Japan Times in a previous episode that it takes him a while to implement his systems. You can see the results a lot of the time with his previous clubs in season 2. He's managed to do it in the space of months. You know, we're looking forward to this week ahead. Now, I'm not getting too overzealous about things. I'm not getting too overconfident. Last season's taught me, if I needed teaching, never ever to get overconfident, because that was, that slapped us right down after a quadruple treble to come away with absolute nothing. And the form of many, many top players to dip the way it did, and for the fractions to start appearing within the fan base, and that disconnect between the club and the fans. So I'll never take it for granted. But there is a process, not wanting to sound too corny, of healing, I guess, after such a catastrophe of a season. And the man that's coming to do it, again, I don't think we knew a great deal about him. I love the way that he deals with the press. He doesn't waste words, does he? He just gets... And you see it even with the Celtic TV interviews. If he's asked something, he'll take that down the road that he wants to take it. He also delivers messages in these conversations and in these interviews, not only to the fans, but to the board, and the message that he constantly delivers is that we need new players. I mentioned yesterday, and it just occurred to me as we were discussing it, when Callum McGregor took off his armband, brilliant squad management. Let's take McGregor off because of the games he's played in the last 5 or 6 seasons. Take him off when we're coasting to a victory. Give him a rest. And he gives the armband on the say-so of Ange to Ryan Christie. And I suggested yesterday that perhaps that was a message to the board. I want to keep this guy. This is how important Ryan Christie is. He is someone that I actually look upon as being a senior professional that I trust. He's up there in the top echelons of this team, as a senior pro. Would you put that past Ange to be sending a message to the board, Dick?
No, I wouldn't. I think, as you say, Paul, since he's came in, he's been very direct with people. I like his love of football. You can tell that this is a guy that has a serious love for the game. That he's not just here in let's go to Celtic and see how it works out. He's here to, continue his career and build his own philosophy at the football club, which all the great managers at this current point in time do. So I really like that about him. But I think touching on Ryan Christie, he certainly looks as if a player that Ange would like to keep. Again, in that left-hand side, we're rather short. I don't think Kyogo can be expected to play there all season. That left-hand side, he still, makes the space, makes the movement, but I think he's deadly, just as the number 9, if you will, up top. So, I like Christie in that left-hand side. I mean, the goals he created that day against Dundee were absolutely fantastic. So, and I think if we could tie him down in a deal, even if it's just for another 2 years or so, and give him that reassurance that, if the move does come in, he can go, it would certainly be a welcome addition. But I wouldn't put it past Ange to be sending that message to the board that he wants to keep him, and that's why he's given him the captain's armband, as if sitting in command to Callum as Christie.
We'll be talking, JP, a wee bit more about Christie once we get to the transfer window discussion. There's only 5 days left of the transfer window, and there was some interesting comments by Ange yesterday all around that, and one of the dilemmas that they might face and the contingency plans that they've got in place for that. But just before you came in, JP, we were discussing last season and where we were going into the first game against Rangers, and we'd already been bounced at the Champions League, similarly to this season. There had been a couple of real concerns in amongst the camp with the bowling goalie and Griffiths scenario. Interesting, both of those guys are still at the club. And, Griffiths has had another situation this pre-season. So although there are some parallels, it's like night and day. Are you surprised, JP, at just how quickly Ange Postecoglou has turned things around since coming in?
I have to admit I am, because I didn't know where the squad and the team were going to be at this point in the season, like going into the last week of August. Like, you just didn't know who was still going to be here, if the people that were here were playing like they wanted to be here. Do you know what I mean? Like, people like Edouard and Christie, we've had Neil Lennon say on record now that Edouard intimated to him that he wanted to leave the club. I don't think you can say that Edouard looks like a player that wants to leave the club. I mean, people have, gone on about him not trying and, his head's out the door and everything else. I'd ask those people, Clockwork Orange style, to be sat in a room with their eyes pinned open and watch Edouard's, highlights of this season and tell me that that's a guy that's not trying. Some things have come off, some things haven't come off. I don't think he's not trying. So from that point alone, to motivate the people, that even if they don't want to still be at Celtic, he's still getting a tune out of them. And you look at, as Declan said, Christie's performances in those in the games that he's played so far competitively have certainly gone, flew in the face of what we saw last season, where you saw a guy that definitely, was not happy. I just don't think he was happy. I think he'd started to think maybe of another move, and it swamped into his mind. Maybe being in Scotland in a lockdown as well, he was thinking, how good would it be to be somewhere else, sunnier, nicer, in a lockdown rather than being in, Glasgow. I think a lot of people would have felt like that, and that would have maybe impacted on his football. Maybe he wasn't playing for Neil Lennon. Who knows? But in regards to what you said, I would never have thought in a million years that we would be going into this game, looking forward to it and bullish, and not really caring about the fact that we don't have our fans there, as we probably should have.
The thing as well, though, we're talking about the want-away players. We spoke about them quite a bit during the season, and Cham, along with Ayer, and perhaps Edouard and Christie, and possibly Frimpong were the want-away stars, as it were. And it's only after the event does the truth start filtering out. JP, like you say, it's been confirmed Edouard had said he wanted away, and Cham obviously wanted away, and that's why we've made the costly decision to tear up his contract. And talking about Cham, because his jersey's over your shoulder. But on the flip side, right, we've got two guys who potentially still want away. They're certainly not signing new deals, Edouard and Christie. And last season, we kind of said that was a mistake to keep the guys that wanted to leave the club. We should have just let them go. And then concentrate not only on the players that we've already got, but the guys that are coming into the squad. They want to be here. They've just signed for us. And, there is that argument, well, if there's players that want to go, we can't make that same mistake again. But I'm going to go back to the Ange Postecoglou effect. Even though the situation with Christie and Edouard in terms of their own personal circumstances, Declan, is the same as it was last season, that key element in this situation at this moment in time, that turnaround in their attitude and their application and their dedication, is Ange Postecoglou. And that's why we're getting the performances out of Ryan Christie. Edouard, to a degree, JP, because I agree with you, there is a difference in his performances this season compared to last, I would suggest. And there's a few others that he's implemented that in who may not be want-away stars, whose performances have improved massively. One being Callum McGregor. So I think that although the circumstances of the situation might be the same, Declan, the fact that you've got that added element of Ange Postecoglou there means that I would quite happily run between now in January, at least, with Edouard and Ryan Christie, if that is the case. And I hope that is the case, because if they were to leave in the next 5 days, I think that gives us a bit of a headache. Postecoglou spoke about a contingency. What do you think that is, Declan? Do you think he's talking about last-minute loan deals? Because we've got a couple of guys that he's obviously got his eyes on, Scales being one of them, plus a striker. And we think we know who the striker is, although we have been linked with Kevin Nisbet. So he's maybe got one or two in the pipeline. So these are the interested parties at the moment, players of interest. Do you think the contingency is maybe utilising the loan market should a Christie or an Edouard leave the building late in the day?
It possibly is in usual Celtic fashion, because how many times have we did it and waited and waited and waited. Last season we knew that we needed a right back when Jeremy Frimpong departed the building. Tony Ralston was left out in the dark, and we went and got a guy in for a few months from Everton on loan, even though we knew that we needed it. So probably in usual Celtic fashion, yes, it's probably the contingency. But what I would say on Christie and Edouard compared to last season is, if it was a collective of 4 or 5 players, the power they hold in the dressing room is far larger than 2 guys. And again, it's all down to man management, I think, in this situation, of what the manager's saying to them. A word of that promise of a new era with Don Mackay too, is that, play for your move here, which a lot of the guys weren't do last season, apart from Chris Hire was the only real guy I would say that played for his move and never really let us down. So it depends on what the conversation is happening between Ange Postecoglou and those 2 individuals, as well as what the club line on this is. If Don Mackay has changed, because if Don Mackay has changed Peter Lawwell's response to the 2 individuals, we don't know what kind of conversations is taking place there, but the promises have been broken. And now that Peter Lawwell's out the door, that as a kind of fresh start for a couple of them with the manager, it's also clear that the philosophy that Ange is playing as a collective in the team is there to see, and players are buying into it, which is different from last season. There didn't seem to be that clear philosophy of what we were doing and what we wanted to do. So it just depends on where Christie and Edouard's head's at, what kind of conversations they've had with the manager, and what kind of conversations they've had with the CEO. But I would hope now, from the performances that I've seen of both players, that we would keep them, because I think they could be really important players in terms of the squad and in terms of the first team going forward for this season.
What's your thoughts, JP? I mean, with regards to Edouard and Christie, I mean, I guess that their thought process in terms of their future hasn't changed a great deal from last season. So it could well be that if an offer which is sufficiently large enough to the club comes in late in the day, they could be leaving. And we're not really looking, I don't think, for a replacement for Christie right now, but I'm pretty sure with the vast scouting network that Celtic has, there will be a few players on a shortlist, and a deal might be struck in terms of a loan deal. I know that we've criticised that in the past because it's short-termism. I mean, the John Joe Kenny deal is a great example of that, isn't it? Here's a player who you're basically giving game time to, and it's benefiting the player, it's benefiting his parent club, and it clearly didn't benefit Celtic last season. We could have played Ralston. Ralston could have played in Kennedy's games in charge, and it didn't happen. What would your thoughts be if we did bring in the 2 players that we're pursuing at the moment, but due to the situation with the late departures, perhaps, we were to go out and bring in 1 or 2 on loan? Would you be quite happy on this occasion, under these circumstances, for that to be the case?
As long as they're of sufficient quality. We don't want to there's no point in bringing in. I mean, look at the quality of the loan players we brought in last season. Laxalt was never really, my kind of player in that position. I said something at one point about him being too slight and, just the kind of guy that just gets wee-guyed in games, and then Duffy, everybody knows the story with Shane Duffy, and you see him now, he's doing so well for Brighton, which I have to say I'm pleased to see. I don't think Shane Duffy was laughing on the way down the road to Brighton in his car. I read an interview with him where you could tell he was gutted. He was absolutely gutted to have come and been this kind of ridiculed figure at the club and not left with any silverware. And, it wasn't how it should have gone for Shane Duffy. So loans are fine for me if they are of the sufficient quality. But just Declan touched upon something there, and I think you guys talked about it either yesterday or the day before, just about how players playing in a good team and playing with other, I think Brian said about, playing with other clever football players. It's like when you play fives. If you're in a good team at fives and, you immediately look around about you when you start the game and you're like, oh, this is going to be good today because they know how I play, I know how they play. And, you make moves for the ball and you anticipate passes, you go for runs, things like that. If I get a buzz out of that, and if other people get a buzz out of that playing fives, imagine what it must be like playing in an 11-a-side game for Celtic in front of 60,000 people. And that's the sort of scenario you find yourself in. So I don't know if that would change a player's mind. We could be sitting here next week and Christie and Edouard are gone and we're talking about the thanks for the memories and all that, but who knows. The other thing with regards to Christie, the armband thing was a message to the board, but it was a message to Ryan Christie as well from the manager to say, I believe in you and I've seen enough from you to know that I want you on my side. And Christie put it up on his Instagram. I know it's social media, I know it could be gossamer thin really at the end of the day in terms of what weight it carries, but he put it up and he was proud of being the captain of Celtic for that moment in time. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with them regarding transfers. I would like to see both of them stay, and maybe Christie could be in a situation like his pal Stuart Armstrong was. I'm almost certain Stuart Armstrong was in a similar situation to this, and he signed a 2-year extension. Yeah. He signed a 2-year deal, which then allowed us to get a fee of 7 million or whatever it was for him. So I would not be averse to that happening. And then if next summer somebody came in for Christie, he's a signed player. We get a good transfer fee for him because it is going to be, if he was to go now, it would be buttons, wouldn't it? It would be nothing. A team could get him for nothing in January.
And it's worth the risk in terms of the Champions League money that's at stake this season. If you look at the two individuals and you combine their transfer tag, what they could probably give to us compared to the prize that we would get at the end of the season if we win the title's massive. And quickly, Paul, seeing the loans, if it's option to buy, I don't mind, because if you look at Elanusi, he's went and scored a hat-trick yesterday. It's probably our only successful loan. So if it's option to buy loans, I don't mind that. But if it's just the short-termism that you're talking about, like John Joe Kenny and stuff, nah, don't want it. Don't want to touch it.
No, I would agree with that, 100%. You mentioned 5-a-sides and playing with good players, JP. We know that there is only one player on this bulletin today who scored a hat-trick at Celtic Park, and it's not Declan or myself. So if there is ever an AXOM versus any other 5-a-side tournament, obviously you'll be playing up front.
I'm there, 100%.
Not sure if I've got somebody between the sticks. Declan, could you guys at the Alternative View get a 5-a-side team together? This could actually happen. This could be a charity event. JP, you've got contact with the 20-minute Tims guys. Is there only 3 of them though?
There is, but they've got like the history boys and there's like Gilly and all that I'm sure would...
Watch this space.
Aye.
I'm thinking charity event here, and then you've got a few that you might want to kick. Anyway, the rebuild, not in the 20-minute Tims. The rebuild. Let's have a wee chat about that. And there's only 5 days, as I say, but 2 of those days are match days. And I know a lot of this is behind the scenes, but time is running out to strengthen. And Celtic, obviously, seem to be pursuing, and this was confirmed by the Shamrock Rovers manager, Liam Scales, is coming in, and he can play centre half or left back. And I've said quite a bit on this podcast about Liam Scales, and obviously we do have a lot of people tuning in from Ireland who have put me right on a few points on Scales. First and foremost, I suggested that it sounded like a Dermot Desmond signing. It's been pointed out that the recommendation for Scales has been from Damien Duff, so that's where the recommendation has come from. I had my doubts that you could go from the Irish League into the Celtic team. I don't mean the Irish League to the Scottish League. There are plenty of players who have made that transition. What I'm trying to say is, could you make, because I see it as a step up to go straight into the Celtic side, and I'm looking at some of the people who have played in the Irish League previously and how it takes a while for them to adapt. And when you look at the defensive situation that we're in at the moment, if you're going to bring a defender and throw them right in, they're going to have to hit the ground running. Because that is probably the weakest area of the park at the moment. So Liam Scales looks to be a done deal. I'm being told that at 500 grand, he's going to be an absolute snip. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to be proven wrong. I've not written him off, absolutely not. I'm just thinking, is he first team ready for Celtic? That's all I'm concerned about. Other names, Hibs are looking to tie Kevin Nisbet down to a better contract, JP. Exactly what you've just said there about the Armstrong situation. Protect your asset, get them signed to a better deal until such times as the club gets the offer that they want for the player as well. No update on Lee Griffiths. No update at the moment on Lee Griffiths, which is a wee bit disappointing, because I would be hoping for Lee Griffiths to move on. Can you see it happening in this transfer window, JP? Have we kind of painted ourselves into a corner by giving Lee Griffiths this extra year? Yeah,
we definitely have. Obviously, they couldn't have foresaw the controversy that arose after that, days after he got the contract. I mean, if not a week. I think, the reaction at that West Ham game, I was there that day, and there was only, I was even 18,500 there. And it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant. Him coming on right now in front of 60,000, or even coming out to warm up, I don't know if that's happened in the last few games since we got full capacity. I don't know if he's been in any squad for that to even happen and go out and warm up. But it wasn't pleasant that afternoon. It's not going to be pleasant again, because you just have this weird kind of swell of some people applauding and some people booing, and then the booing, going up against the applause, and you're just like, wait a minute, there's a game going on here. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a game going on. There's 11 players out there in Celtic.
It's a sideshow. It's a sideshow, JP.
That's what we're watching. I don't care about that. I'm not going to boo. I'm not going to cheer. This guy's warming up. I'm watching the game. So you don't want that. And I think for him as well, it's probably best that he goes somewhere maybe a wee bit far away, just to rejuvenate what's left of his career. And it's not going to be at Celtic. Let's face facts. There's no way. It's not going to happen.
Does he become a journeyman? Declan, I've mentioned, Anthony Stokes' career path since leaving Celtic, and particularly since leaving Hibs. Does Lee Griffiths become that journeyman player who has short-term deals wherever he can get a contract? This is a guy who was in line for and was touted for and championed for a place at the Euros just in the summer.
Well, I mean, if you look at him compared to his other counterparts at Hibs, a lot of them have fallen into that category. And as well as that, I think Celtic will be the biggest club that Lee Griffiths plays for now. There's not going to be any moves to Wolves or anything like that. That Wolves are in the same league as Celtic, but in terms of the level of football, he's not going to get a bigger move. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. He's at that age where it could just, spiral out, and his future's definitely not at Celtic Park anyway. And I think for his sake and for the club's sake, it's best just to mutually part ways.
Yes, the question being, where will he end up? Can't see him remaining in Scottish football. Werder Bremen are out with the running for Georgios Giacomakis. It would seem that he's still on Celtic's radar, but we shall wait and see. I can't see us bringing him in when we've got Edouard at the club alongside Ayeti and Griffiths, with Kyogo also able to play through the middle. I think that would only happen if Edouard and or Griffiths leave the building. Apparently West Ham certainly don't want Edouard. That's come out over the last 48 hours. And also, when we're looking at the transfer business, the ins and the outs, we have been informed by Ange Postecoglou that he might dip back into the Japanese market in January. Declan, I mean, we've had, I would say, maybe a mixed bag from our experiences of Japanese players, but when they're good, they are off the scale good. And if we can pick up another player anywhere near the kind of classic Kyogo, then we'll be doing well. You've not had an opportunity, Declan, on Axom at least, to discuss the racism fallout around Kyogo. The question I would ask you, because it's been obviously discussed in depth on the broadcast since it happened, do you feel that will have a galvanising effect on Celtic going into Sunday's game?
Possibly. I know Ange Postecoglou said that, his experiences since arriving in Scotland and at Celtic, he's enjoying life in a new country. He's enjoying being at Celtic, especially with the way of playing football at the moment. Everything has probably been 99% positively good, and there's obviously been that abhorrent 1% that I'm no doubt that he'll have seen probably in social media. But he's probably seen the love from the Celtic support, which has been a good thing, that he's, we're really right behind him through this. And it might galvanise some of the Celtic players to go and, especially in a stadium that there's not going to be one Celtic fan in, to really, go there and put on a show and lay down a marker, not just for the rest of the season, but what we are as a football club and what we are as a collective team behind one player. Just to go back quickly in the J-League though, Paul, I think in recent years, if you look at when Gordon obviously brought Nakamura, I wouldn't really say that Gordon Strachan and his new advisory role is any expert in Japanese football, whereas our manager at the moment obviously is and knows the market and knows the league so well. If you look at his comments over Kyogo, he talks about, he basically ran the league for years and he knew what he was getting when he brought him here. So we've got a guy that in that market, as long as the player would be able to come here and settle like Kyogo has, it would probably tear the league up. So we've got an expert in that field and going into the J-League. And I just really hope that the wee man scores a goal on Sunday.
Oh, it would be fantastic. And it's bound to help him as well to have a fellow countryman in the team. I mean, I think that's bound to help Kyogo. When we're looking ahead to tonight's game, before we start talking about the Rangers game, JP, Declan and I had a conversation before you joined us on your tour of Scotland. You've nipped into your own place to have a wee chat with Axom. Ange just made it pretty clear. He's going to be cavalier tonight. He's going to play his own game. And Declan and I were kind of saying we're more confident when we're going forward anyway, so that's maybe a good thing. A lot of the comments that are coming in here are, let's get an early goal. If we do, would you feel home and dry at that stage? And would you continue to play that game, JP, or do you change your style if you get that early goal?
I mean, I was at the game at Celtic Park, and I know that we rode our luck a little bit. Certainly, the save early on from Joe Hart. The big guy up front was looked a bit of a handful, but we could have scored more as well. And I'm not going over there with a 2-0 lead, fearing for my life like I may have done in the past. I think the mentality is different about this team. There's something going on. Where it leads to and when it ends, I don't know. I'm not, suggesting that we're going to be in Seville next year or anything like that. I mean, I heard you say the other day that the final's in Seville. I've always wanted to go back. I've never been back since that day. I was only there for about 7 or 8 hours or something like that because it was a short and sweet visit. But I'm not saying that, but I just think there's something about this team that I can see us scoring a goal tonight, and if we score a goal, they need 4. I mean, and I don't think we're going to concede 4. As much as people keep labouring the point about our defence, I've got a half decent defensive record so far this season, and we've absolutely battered teams. 2 back-to-back 6-0 victories in the league. Haven't done that thanks to Matthew. Hail history, Matthew, by the way, who dragged up that it was year 2000 into 2001 under Martin O'Neill was the last time we won 6-0 back-to-back at home. So it's 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean? There's something different going on, and it makes me. I'm looking forward to the game tonight. I'm not going in with behind the couch or anything like that. I'm going in again. I'm not going in all like, oh, we're going to take 3 or 4 off them or anything like that. But I'm not going in thinking this is going to be a disaster, and we're up against it. Because you look at the firepower we've got. And I know we're missing Forrest, but Abada looks dynamite. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he scores tonight. He's got a decent scoring record so far. And I said when we signed him, he has to be a guy that contributes, and he's already contributed way more than I thought he would. And we're only a month into his life as a Celtic player, so let's see where he's at the end of the season.
Where are you watching the game, JP?
The fine establishment of the Brazen Head. I will be in there with all guns blazing, and looking forward to it. It's better than watching it in the house on my Jack Jones, so I'll be there with some pals, and looking forward to it.
I'll be watching it right here because we'll be covering the game. Let's have a wee look at some of the comments. I appreciate that we're about 3/4 of the way through the show and I haven't tapped into the comment sections. If you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and anywhere else this has been streamed, then welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And Red Scotland comes in, regular contributor. I think we should be all over them like a rash from the beginning in order to deny them the chance to get into the game and to hopefully nick a goal and put the tie strongly in our favour. Absolutely anything can happen even with that early goal, but I think that it's not beyond us, as JP says. Absolutely. But again, the Urban Coolsey comes in. We got lucky in defence last week. A couple of times we certainly did. I think we need to go all out for the first goal, or it could be a long night. Strange Love, the Doctor. Hi, fellas. I'm looking for another good performance. Possibly we can improve on our passing, as in the last game, it wasn't quite crisp enough. Treat the game like it's nothing each and try your best to win. It's certainly not beyond us, but I pick up on one of the points that JP made there in relation to the defence. It is a makeshift defence, Declan. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at the performance throughout the season, competitive games only, it was a shambles against West Ham, right? We know that. I mean, we were bounced out to Midtjylland, but the circumstances were such that we went into that second leg with Dane Murray and Stephen Welsh playing together. We took the lead. We ended up losing the game after extra time. But, I mean, it's thin margins when you look at the makeup of that defence on that particular night. We then go into the Hearts game. We lose it. It's Carl Starfelt's debut. Again, we're just throwing a defence together. But then we start to bring in, Joe Hart, for example. Then there's a wee bit more confidence. Ralston's performances have not dipped. People thought it might have just been, 2 or 3 games, a flash in the pan. But, half a dozen games in, he's still performing well. It definitely needs strengthening, Declan. But is it still a worry for you tonight in the defensive area?
It's a worry if we suffer an injury. It would probably be my biggest worry and concern. To see that the sight of near Beaton trotting on would be really concerning for me. But, the back four it's solid enough. As you say, the introduction of Joe Hart's can be doing a lot with the back four, because our last line is a good enough goalkeeper that's constantly bawling and shouting at the players in front of him, which again I think will have instilled a lot of hope and faith in the back four that they probably lacked last season. And obviously Stephen Welsh has got a run in the team who I think has been terrific as well. He's continued his good performances after being thrown in at the deep end. What we were talking about earlier on, Paul, that 2-0 game at Celtic Park was the game he got thrown in the deep end, but he's consistently performed for us ever since then. And, as a young lad getting into that team has looked almost like the experienced pro at the back at times. So as long as we don't suffer any major injuries, I would still be, fairly confident that we could get through the tie with the back four that we've got. And obviously, we've still got the manager. Maybe Juranovic might be in the bench tonight. I don't know if he can play after playing for Warsaw, so can't play, so he's out. So really, if you're suffering any blows, you're very, bare bones at the bench, your defence. So that would be a concern for me. But as long as the back four is are fit for the whole game and no injuries are suffered, I think it'd be okay.
It's a good point, that, because the other day there, when Ange was speaking about the right-back situation, the fact that Juranovic is in and available against Rangers, he basically called Ralston his only right-back. So you've got a couple of players there who might have just been rolling their eyes at that comment, and Leo Connor and Urhoghide who have come in. O'Connor obviously is playing more of his football for the Colts at the moment, but Urhoghide is one of these guys who's come in from Sheffield Wednesday. From what we've seen in the friendly games, there was a wee bit for him to go before he was ready for the first team. But as you say, you get injured. If you get an injury to Tony Ralston, for example, JP, you're either shifting Stephen Welsh to right back and bringing in either Urhoghide or Beaton for the centre half, or you're bringing on Urhoghide at right back. And bearing in mind, tonight, AZ Alkmaar, there's the return of Jesper Karlsson, who's a flying left winger. He comes back in. He was missing from the first leg, one of their star men. So I share the kind of concerns that Declan's got. You know, it's going to be hearts in the mouth if we do get an injury tonight. But we are addressing that, JP. This is the thing. It's not as though we're banging our heads against a brick wall, because Ange is addressing it. The club are addressing it. We are bringing in the players, as well as Jesper Karlsson, as JP already said. Forrest is out tonight. He's not travelled. McCarthy's not travelled. Now, let's have a wee chat about James McCarthy. He's come in, and because some of the other players like Leo Labada, Kyogo, Joe Hart have done so well since they've come in, you know, we've not really focused on McCarthy. But 2 cameo appearances, JP, 15 minutes, I think, he's played against Hearts and against St Mirren. Is it a concern for you that he's not really featured that much? I mean, I didn't expect him to walk into the team, don't get me wrong, but I expected him to at least be on the bench and fit and ready to play.
I guess so. It might just be coming too soon for him. They might not want to, overload it, and just he'll be, because he's not played a lot of football, has he? Have I got that right or wrong?
Never had a proper pre-season either. I mean, he was training himself, so in terms of his fitness levels, it'll be still well behind everybody else in the team. Yeah.
I just think, I guess he's maybe been left behind for fitness reasons. I don't know, but I think you'll probably not see the benefits of McCarthy if and when he gets fit until maybe a couple of months into the season or something like that, because it's going to take a while for him to get up to speed. I think if Beaton is ever going to play for Celtic again, centre mid is where I would want to see him play. I genuinely don't want to see him play at centre half. If we're short of numbers in midfield, then of course Near Beaton, international player, he's never played terribly in centre midfield that I can remember, but not centre half. There's too many mistakes. Discipline and positioning, 2 things that are key as a centre half. That the Morelos thing made me sick to my teeth, and the pointing the finger in the guy's head, that let us down. I mean, that arguably could have cost us, that tie. I don't want to fling it all on him, because obviously there was another game to go and another 90 minutes, 120 minutes. But you can't have people like that, as your last line of defence, who are going to do moronic things like that. I don't know how far if we had beaten Midtjylland, I'm led to believe we would be in the Europa League. In fact, I know we would. That's a fact. I had a bit of back and forth with a pal about this, but no, if we'd have beaten Midtjylland, we'd have been right in the Europa League, so we wouldn't have had these games against Jablonec and Alkmaar to contend with. So we would have been straight in, and would have been none of this travelling about in midweek ahead of the Rangers game on Sunday or anything like that. So I don't know what we would have done had we beaten them and then got into the Champions League qualifiers. I think we probably would have got bounced out of PSV. But ultimately we'd have had the safety net of Europa League football. So I'm on that side of the fence when it comes to Near Beaton and the defence.
I think when you look at that as well, we spoke about it earlier on in the show, Declan and I, about the fact that there is an opportunity, or a possibility rather, that we will face Midtjylland at some point this season in the group stages, should we get there. And, I think at that point it'll become a bit of a frustration, because I think there'll be a far more free-flowing Ange Postecoglou team at that stage, JP. But it's gone. It is gone.
It'll be clues all over again. That's what it'll be.
I know, absolutely. Now, Michael Boy comes in to suggest if Griffiths wants to extend his career, he will need to go down south or Europe. I said earlier on this week, I don't even think, when you're looking at down south and the levels that maybe previously he would have been looking at, I don't think there would be many clubs, even in the Championship, would take a punt on Griffiths. We've just been speaking there about the lack of football McCarthy's played maybe in the last 3 seasons or so, 3-4 seasons. You look at Griffiths' record, anybody just looking at the baseline stats of games played in the last 3-4 seasons, and they really would be reluctant to take him on. There's only so many times you can hark back to the 40 goal a season under Ronnie Dyler or the 2 goals that he scored against England. So, we don't know what the future holds for Leigh Griffiths. But let's have a wee talk about the lineup tonight, because there is obviously a couple of options available to Ange Postecoglou. I think we're going to stick to the goalie in the defence, Declan. There's no real question around that. Once we start moving into the midfield area, I guess there's a question of whether or not Edouard starts. Do you start with Edouard? Because I know that Christie came in at the weekend there for Rogic, and you're not going to drop Christie. But what do we do up top? Are we even able to set it up so that Abada's going to start, because Forrest certainly isn't fit to start? Christie on the left, Furuhashi and Edouard. Can you play Furuhashi as a 9 and Edouard as a 10? Is there an option to do that, do you think?
I don't think the 4-3-3 there probably is that option. I like the balance that the midfield has with McGregor as a 6, Turnbull as the 8, and Tom Rogic as the 10. And Edouard can do a shift if he comes on off the bench. I probably think that's one of the reasons he maybe started at the weekend. It was just to continue his fitness. But as I said earlier on, I think Kyogo at times is a wee bit wasted out on that left-hand side. I like him making those splitting runs into the box and trying to get on the end of balls that Christie and Abada would be setting up for him. So I would stick with that as my team going forward. There's McGregor, Turnbull and Rogic in midfield, and then Abada, Christie and Kyogo, and then definitely Edouard to be introduced into the game about 55-60 minutes.
What's your thoughts on that, JP? Do you think Eddie will be benched this evening?
I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I quite like the fact that I don't know what he's going to do either. And because, let's face it, that you don't want a predictable team. I think he's the type of guy that, quite comfortably would shuffle the pack because he's got so much to play with. Maybe not at the moment because he doesn't have Forrest available for that sort of front 3, but it's quite exciting to have those options, and you've got a fit and firing Tom Rogic again. It's some of the things that I've seen him do in the last few weeks is just absolutely unbelievable. If that was somebody else doing that, you'd be watching it and drooling, and it's just because it's Tom Rogic, you're like, oh, but Tom Rogic is a good football player. He's just not hit the heights that we expected from him in the last couple of years, and he's been sitting getting a king's ransom every week for not doing very much. But if he starts pulling the strings now, then it's saving us the money and having to go out and spend a sizable fee on somebody to replace him. Because let's face it, if you wanted somebody to do what Tom Rogic is doing right now, you need to pay quite a lot of money for him to do that. So if he starts paying us back in that respect, then I'll maybe not be as disappointed at the fact that we've not seen much from him for quite some time.
The thing with Tommy Rogic, this time last year, we were talking about that at the beginning of the show, JP. This time last year, Griffiths had missed the pre-season trip to France. One of the players who was left behind for fitness training because he wasn't up to speed was Tom Rogic. There was 3 or 4 players left behind at that time, and he was one of them. His season never really got started. A few cameo appearances. I think a goal against AC Milan, was it? From distance. And, there was an opportunity for Tom Rogic to leave the club. He was going to go to Qatar, I think it was. And it was at that stage that, it would have been thanks for the memories and farewell. And then you see him trim, because he's looking trim, he's looking fit, and he's contributing. And as you say, he does things with that ball that, maybe other than David Turnbull at times, no one else on that part can do. The close control is incredible. He's got that magnetic foot. And, again, it's the Ange Postecoglou effect. In many ways, you can't take away from the fact that Rogic has got himself fit. It's as fit as I can remember ever seen him in a Celtic jersey. So it's great to see. Absolutely tremendous to see. We've got a few predictions coming in very quickly from Facebook, who reckons that we're going to go through virtue of a 2-2 tonight. I'd be happy with that, JP.
Oh God, I mean, just to get through. I mean, I can't see us having. I mean, famous last words, but I can't see us having one of those nightmare nights. I mean, it's going to take a nightmare night to make it a nightmare. Because we're 2-0 up. Let's not forget, we're 2-0 up. Probably should be 3. Remember that crazy 3 saves on the spin at the end? Mm-hmm. That, I mean, whatever you want to say about their chances, we could have been 3-0 up and completely home and hosed. So I'm not fearful. The team, a less experienced Celtic team, went to Midtjylland and took them to extra time. I'm not entirely sure that AZ Alkmaar are light years ahead of Midtjylland in terms of their quality. So I'm just going to enjoy the game, and rather than be kind of fearful of it, I'm going to embrace it and enjoy the game for once, because God knows after last season, we deserve that, because last season in Europe was horrendous. I mean, those Sparta Prague games will still haunt me. We should never have been getting beat 4-1 off a team like that, in home and away as well, 8-2 on aggregate.
I know. And in one of the games, they were missing so many of their first teamers. There were rookies playing in that game. Absolutely. Declan, do you share our views? We'll get through tonight a wee bit confident. It's great to be looking forward to a Celtic game rather than watching it through like a horror movie from behind the couch.
Yeah, there's a feel-good factor around the club now, Paul. And I'm looking forward to tonight. A score and draw would do me 1-each, 2-2. Just as long as we go through, I don't really care. I wouldn't like us to go to penalties or anything like that, but as long as we go through, it's all I'm bothered about, and it's a tie. And again, it keeps up the momentum that we've got going here. I don't know how many, was that 6 wins in the bounce so far? It should be, and this would be kind of number 7 undefeated, even if we can get a draw. So, there's a momentum within the squad at this point in time, and a score and draw tonight, I think, would be a fair result. But it'll be a different game over here, very different. I would imagine Alkmaar will be. Play a bit differently than they did at Celtic Park, but I still think that Alkmaar defence is getting mistaken, as does their goalkeeper. So just go and draw. I'm going to go 2 each.
Well, Declan and JP, you enjoy it in your respective establishments, and everybody else who's tuned in on the social media channels and on YouTube, enjoy the game. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. We're giving away monthly prizes. All you need to do is subscribe on YouTube. Also, click on the notifications button and use the option for all, so you'll be notified every time we come live. Now and again, we just do impromptu live bulletins. You never know what's happening, and we might just pop up on your notification screen. So thanks everybody for joining us, and come back on tonight, because we'll be on half an hour before the game on a Celtic State of Mind.